Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to my talk today. Stuck in Class, React Hooks is your get out of class pass. My name is Jennifer Ponder. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I love to scuba dive and also travel and document my journeys, of course. And also, I am the front-end development track lead at Women Who Code. So what are React hooks? So we've been hearing a lot about hooks so far. You know, if you tend to like to use class components for React, if you have dabbled in React, you do development on a daily basis, it's the hot new thing, or it's been for a while. So basically, it's a way to add state to function components. So we all know that hooks, it was introduced in 16.8 version. Also, they are useful to help you write cleaner code. Now, at ReactConf 2018, Dan Abramov, he actually introduced React hooks and what they are doing to help. Why are hooks important? Basically, if you, like I said before, you're writing class components, they can get larger, very cumbersome if you're dealing with, like, per se, higher order components, and you need to be able to scale your applications, because we all know how it gets when you need to refactor your code, and sometimes you're just writing more and more continuous lines of code, and it just seems like, hey, I can't get out of this. What can I do? So basically, hooks let you split one component into smaller functions. You can also have control over what you're looking at. You're not getting lost in component will mount, component did update, and things of that nature. And they don't require you to learn complex logic. So sometimes you notice if you're creating components and you're having to, okay, let me go try to Google what I need to find out to get this to work. So basically, we're going to look at some separations of concerns here. So say, for instance, this particular area right here, our component did mount. Right here, you got some DOM manipulation going on, some updating, everything you're putting right here in this particular area, sorry. If we look here, hooks, they're always going to be at the top of your application, of course. This is a way that you can separate everything that's going on. Your side effects, you can think of it again as component did update, component will mount, those types of things you would use in your use effect. And that way you're able to separate all of this out and you can see this separately. And it also lets your code look very clean. You know where everything is, you know, and of course, if you do like writing class components, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. You know, this is just a way for you to look at and say, maybe hooks may be good in certain cases, wherever for you. But definitely wanted to look at that just as a way to have you see the difference. Now, are there anybody in here already that you're using hooks or you've kind of been familiar with it? Okay, a couple people. All right, great. Okay, so rules for using hooks, of course, like we saw on the last slide. Basically, you're going to use them at the top level. They're going to be used there every time. Also, you don't want to call hooks inside of loops, conditions, or nested functions at all. And they must indicate the keyword used, of course, to invoke them and activate them. Only call hooks from React function components and not JavaScript components, of course. So here's our class component. You know, typically, we're going to have our constructor there to activate our state, of course, because functions, you know, when you have function components, that's basically, they're just going to be kind of like they say, the dumbed down components. They don't really do anything. So you got to use a class component to activate the state, of course. So here, what we're doing, we're just initializing our count right here. Sorry. We're going to increment our count, basically bind this. This is certainly the way we activate it. And we're just having a button down here to indicate, increment the count down here, basically. So this is just, you know, a general example of our class component. Now, some common uses in React, one of the easier ones is the use state and use effect. So use state hook. This hook allows you to add state to our function component. So this is pretty much the easiest place that you're going to see this. So basically, we have our functional use state component here. So basically, we think of this as just a variable. We have a count here. And our set count, we think of that as this dot set state. So basically, we're doing the same thing like we did in our class component. We just have easier to read here, less lines of code, and we're doing the exact same thing. And again, use state in action here. We pretty much have the count, also our set count for this dot set state, and we have just different buttons here doing different actions, resetting, adding the count, or decrementing the count here. So our use effect hook. So basically when you're doing things like data fetching, changing the DOM, doing subscriptions, API calls, usually that's where you're gonna see the use effect hook. So basically, as I stated before, component did mount, component did update, and component will unmount. That's what you can think of that and just cross-reference that for. So what usually happens in use effect? You're letting React know it needs to do something. So it's going to update after every re-render and every update. So our use effect hook in action right here. So what we're doing right here, we're updating the title here. So basically, we still have our count in place and we still have our set count because we're setting the state right here, but we're indicating something needs to happen after every re-render. Something needs to go and take place, and we do have our button right here as well. So hopefully you all can see this. Basically, I wanted to put a side-by-side of a class component versus our use effect, just to show how things are working. So basically in the component did mount, you have a document title here that's creating that, the this.state.count here, sorry. And your component did update. Where here you have, of course, again, less lines of code, and you're already setting the state here without having to create that constructor where you'll initially set that. Also, use effect with API fetch. Now, a lot of times when you have a re-render, that could create continuous API calls, and you really don't want to do that. So here, you can use it in the same way. And you'll have a callback function right here to load the data. And basically, you'll have that so you don't have to keep doing those continuous progressions of the API calls. So we have advanced hooks. So we're going to get into that because definitely, as far as the documentation is concerned, you definitely can create your own React hooks as well. If there's something that you want to create that's outside and you're looking like, okay, I have nothing to help do this, you certainly can look at the docs to help you with that. So here are 11 React hooked examples that I found that are great for optimizing your code that I thought were really important. And there's certainly more out there. And as I stated before, you can create your own custom hooks to help you in your own applications as well. Now, has anyone, in your enterprise applications, anyone at work or just for side projects, have you all tested using React hooks so far? Okay, awesome, good. Okay, a few people. Was there anyone that would like to share their experience so far with React hooks?
Way cleaner.
I'm sorry?
Way cleaner to use the high order components.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, these are some examples right here. Use array, use media, use lock body scroll, use memo, use event listener, use dark mode, of course. That one I found really interesting. Use history, use spring, use theme to change the themes, use context. That replaces context API, but we're going to get into that, of course, and the use reducer if you're familiar with how to create the reducer and using Redux as well. So we're going to take a look at advanced hooks in action. Okay, so these are the, as you saw in the previous slide before, use reducer and use context, use ref, use memo, and use callback. So use reducer and use context, you will see those pretty much together a lot. And even when you're doing it in your daily, day-to-day coding, you may see those, and they're not really interchangeably, but you do see those pretty much side by side most of the time. Now, our use reducer hook is really used for complex state. It takes from the reducer function, of course. It takes an initial state as an input and returns the current state as a dispatch function. as output with array destructuring. So basically, just like I stated before, if you're familiar with Redux and a reducer, this is pretty much the same. It's just going to replace all of that. So here we have an event that's occurring, and when you dispatch an action using the dispatch method, the reducer updates the state based on the type of action. So basically right here, the use reducer, the state and the action right here, and you return the state based on the action and the initial state right here. And you set the new state, and you're telling it to dispatch. So basically, that's pretty much how you would use the use reducer. Use context provides a way to pass data through the component tree without having to pass props down manually at different nesting levels. So I'm sure you've all heard of props drilling, and that can cause a bit of a nightmare too, because you're moving through so many nested levels of code. So with use context, that's another way to prevent that from happening. So as I stated, usually with your applications, if you're always finding yourself refactoring your code, of course, and you're getting stuck in all of these nested levels, you definitely can try use context to help with that, because it will really save you some time. Now, as far as the context API here, this is pretty much how you would do it before, when you have your context provider and your consumer, React.create context, of course, and use context in action here. So you do again have your state and your dispatch and your use context, my context. So I think in this way with use context is definitely much cleaner, because use context, when you're doing the context API and the regular class component, I have noticed where it really does get to be it can be very cumbersome to move through all of that. And one thing I will say about React hooks too, you will see a less time with debugging. You're always going to have to debug, of course, and it may take you hours or, a few minutes, just depending on. But with React hooks, you're not falling through all this debugging that you have to do, of course, and that's to be expected. And use ref, which is used to access the DOM or React elements rendered in the render function. So pretty much this is how it looked before. Of course, we have our same class component, of course. With our super props create ref right here, this is pretty much how it was done before. And usually you would see use ref again with manipulating the DOM, and this can be done in extensively built components too. And this is our use ref hook right here. You can put use ref and ref created here and just console log it out. And this will be the syntax for that. So use memo. Now use memo and use callback, those have what I've seen to be pretty much interchangeable, because how I said before, use reducer and use context. You may see those together, but they're definitely not going to be used in the same way. So with use memo, a way to avoid performing the same task and rerunning the same function, it takes two parameters, a callback function and an array of inputs. So it's pretty much, it works just like that for use callback and use effect, you will see that. So with use callback, it's a way to add more dependency to your code without necessary re-rendering. So re-rendering throughout this whole presentation and throughout my research with React hooks, a lot of it was to cut the re-render time, cut the processing, especially with APIs, of course, too, without you continuously having to make API calls all the time, but also to stop all the re-rendering and all the processing time. So it will return a memoized version of the callback that only changes if one of the inputs have changed. And also it is useful when passing callbacks to optimize child components. So this is what use memo, use callback, of course, what we have here. The callback, and then you have the array. This is typically how it's set up. And also here we have pretty much where We'll create two states that will keep the count of the number. All hooks are called. So your hooks are again up here called at the top. For MIMO, this is pretty much used. MIMO is going to be used when there is a lot of processing, something that's very cumbersome going on. And here you'll give an empty array of dependencies. The callback function will return the old value because use callback will return its MIMO-ized function. We'll create a MIMO hook here. The MIMO count changes, the function will be executed again. And here the component will receive a function and will change when the dependency value changes. And also too here, you will change the callback hook dependency to trigger a change in the child elements. And after creating use MIMO, exchange of MIMO count will trigger the function passed to otherwise the MIMO-ized value will be returned. Now with use MIMO and use callback, pretty much use callback, it's more so dependency based, where use MIMO, like I said, anything that needs to take a lot of expensive time in being processed you use with. Has anyone so far used MIMO or used callback extensively at all? Okay, so pretty much your first time probably seeing this. So I feel like a good use case for use MIMO and use callback, again, this would be something that's extensively where hey, it's going to take a fairly large piece of your component that you need to do in an application that you could use that for. Also too, as you know that hooks are more and more, they're being used constantly all the time, React, they're not getting rid of class components at all. They're going to be around to stay. So you definitely don't have to worry about, oh my God, hooks, they're just going to be here and we just got to kind of go along with it and use it. Definitely you can use it at your will. If you find that class components work better for you, definitely do what works. But if you would like to use hooks to, as again, I said, you can scale your code down, definitely break apart your separation of concerns is going to be much clearer. Now if you do like to keep all of your things in one area, of course, where the component did update and will mount, certainly you can do that, of course, but I think it's up to the user, of course, it's up to the developer what you want to do. So that's what I think I see this journey going forward. Now, there have been also some talks of, React hooks, well, I don't know, is it really working? Can we really scale this? And do we have the data to really show where, hey, it may not be working as fast? So you will have those talks as well. But from what I gathered, as the gentleman stated earlier in the audience, you do notice that it does help you to write cleaner code, and that's the overall goal. You definitely want to do things, automate your processes, write cleaner code, and definitely cut down your application time, of course. What I've noticed too as well with React hooks, some particular enterprise corporations, some small businesses, they are adopting hooks, but most people pretty much like to use them in their side projects. And I've actually used them in a side project of mine. So, it just depends on what you think may work best for the particular project that you're doing. So, it's always, it depends on, and especially, with developers, that, hey, whatever works for this project may not work for another project. So, and it's things being developed all the time with React hooks as they go along. So it's certainly now a lot more YouTube videos, tutorials, even people giving their ideas about React hooks, especially always it's journal articles you can read. Hacker Noon, of course, I'm sure you all know of things that are going on because they're taking off and actually they're going in a direction of more people are using them. So definitely what I wanted to do is give some insight today on what React hooks really are, how you can use them, what will be some great advanced ones, because as I said before, definitely if there's something that you're just creating on your own and you want to create your own custom hook, there's definitely that information is in the documentation as well. And there are people creating a lot of custom React hooks right now. And that's exciting because every day I'm pretty much reading about a new custom hook being created. So it just pretty much depends on, where you want to go, where you want to take this sort of thing, and how big and how large it's getting. The next thing that I also noticed too is I haven't really seen too many, just cumbersome applications being made, but the thing would be, it helps you, instead of you refactoring or rewriting your code, you're pretty much making new, components, actually. Because with your components, your class components, you can change those, refactor those how you want to. But with React hooks, you can pretty much delete a line or add a line. You don't have to be like, okay, well, I'm changing this and it's going to cause all of this backlog for you. So you can always do that as well. So that's something I've noticed. And then right here, what I put together was some resources. So definitely, if you do want to look more into React hooks, these are definitely great resources for you to look into. Like I stated before, I wanted to provide, just some great information on what they are, how they can help you, especially with the advanced ones, because use state, use effect, I'm sure you all have seen that before. And if you have an understanding of React, you know what they do. But definitely wanted to show you the advanced ones that you may not see all of the time. And what I like best about the React hooks documentation, which documentation we know pretty much helps you, it's very lengthy, but it does go into great examples. Also, the use context and use reducer resource I put together right here too. That one's very helpful because, as I stated before, a lot of times people try to put those use context and use reducer together, but that one really helps to differentiate that one out. And the 10 React hooks you should have in your toolbox. So these are very helpful, and what you should adopt, why you should adopt React hooks. Because again, unlike, with everything, there's always going to be, hey, this may work for this and that may not work for that, and everybody has their personal take on them. But this is a great article to tell you just some things why this may be important, why you should look at, okay, create something on your own, see if it works or if you like it. If you don't, definitely keep your class components. It's definitely something that you can play around with. And as I stated before, a lot of people are doing stuff with, I've seen some projects with Google Maps. They've been playing around with that, or refactoring, projects on your own. So it just depends on what you would like to do. And also too, if there's anybody who, if you haven't tried React hooks, do we have anybody that would probably be, anybody in here that will probably take something home and try to go ahead and try to start using React hooks today or next week or next month, or likely to just look into it a little bit more though? So that's what we want to do. That's what I wanted to do today, just to strike a conversation and just, some information to, hey, this is something that I think is really cool that I want to share with you all today, especially if you're, class components are getting very large and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting caught in wrapper hell or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, this is taking days and I can't cut down my time. So definitely wanted to take some time now to see, do you all have any questions? Or definitely.
Is there any difference in the way they're used with state management, like Redux or MobX?
Not that I've seen so far. I think it's pretty much the same. Now MobX, I've seen some cumbersome things going on there, but I really don't think there's really just a huge difference, Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you said use effect gets called on mounting and updating.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you wanted to fetch data on mount, but you didn't want it to get called on every update. How would you do that?
Basically, there's a way, and there's a script, I should have put it in here, that you can stop that, because most of the time, like I said earlier, there is a process of basically stopping all the re-rendering, because that's really the main thing what I found here. But definitely what I can do, if you all want to follow me, and definitely I will put that in the slides, I can get that script in there for you. Definitely be glad to put that, because that's very important. Because like I said, with the API fetching and things like that, with the reprocessing, you have to have those little things in there like that, of course. So definitely I love to get you that information. Did anyone else have any questions?
For use effect, if you just use an empty URL first one time.
Yeah.
You had it on your API example, correct?
Okay.
Is that what it? Yeah.
Well, it's actually two. It's actually another script that does help with that, so I'd be glad to go back. Hold on. Yeah. So, and then two, there was a script that I forgot to put in here that will definitely help, that I definitely want to get, but I definitely want to put this example back as well. And also too, you know, just like I said, with these, it's pretty much, you can just have the simple theme of less re-rendering, less reprocessing. That's pretty much what I think of it in scaling pretty much your applications. Now, will this be massively adopted? I mean, it's taking steam, it's growing, but you know, still again, it's pretty much at the kind of a low level right now, but you will have more people who, okay, instead of all these side projects, let's put it out and let's see. Because I'm definitely, you know, doing research as far as the companies who are massively, hey, we're just getting rid of class components altogether. We're just gonna go full steam ahead with React hooks and put our name out there, as far as just changing our whole infrastructure of how we set our state and how we do our data and things of that nature. So definitely that's something that I'm looking into as well. Now, how many of you all pretty much, you just like, hey, I just love my class components. I don't want to give it up. You know, I just like that. Are there any folks who just, hey, I'm diehard class components? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think it works best with whatever you like to do, but I always like to see, you know, if you deal with class components, you know, what are some of the things that you've noticed, you know, hey, I like class components. I know I have to work with them, of course, but, you know, they can be cumbersome in this way. You know, are there any things that, you know, go ahead.
I really like functional components because if I'm teaching React,
Sure.
every component's a function.
Yeah.
It's just a function and it returns something that
Yeah.
can be rendered, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to teach.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need it to be a class, and sometimes it's better if it's just a function.
Yeah.
There's just one, it's simple.
Yeah, that's what I love too. Functions, I mean, it definitely makes it, and I know, like I said before, they call it the dumbed down without nothing. It's just, and it is, that's what it is. And, you know, but functions, I find it much better when you're trying to get across and, like you said, teach different things about it. It goes over way smoother, because sometimes even when you're first having your first journey into React and trying to get it down and understand it, just breaking down the class component logic and function to, you know, your functions, I find that much more, you know, you'll understand. And even for myself, understanding functions for me early on was a lot better. You know, until you know, you're going to have that continuous repetition, and you know, you add your state in your class components, but definitely you're going to have it be much better within that. So definitely we're going to go back to look at our resources here if anybody wanted to take a picture of that also. But I always come across great resources for React hooks that I like to use all the time. So these were really some great ones. So just in case somebody, if you all didn't get a chance to take a picture of that, I'm going to leave those up for a minute. But I always try to think of great things that you can use with React hooks, because I think it's all about the use case, basically, because sometimes you may not have, and it just depends on what you want to use it with, but I definitely find them very helpful. So some key takeaways today would be sure to use the use when creating hooks, because otherwise they won't be activated. You can't use them, of course. Only call hooks at the top level of your functions, of course. And only call hooks from function components, of course. And React hooks creates a way of separation of concern, so you can definitely see that distinctively called out. And also, like I said, they help you to write cleaner code, and you got less lines of code to go through. So who doesn't like that? You don't want to read 200 lines of code when you can do something probably in about 50 or 40. So, or, you have 20 lines of code and you can do it in 10. So definitely like that there. And definitely thank you guys for your time. And just want to take the time to let you know, as I stated before, I am the front end track lead at Women Who Code. So pretty much if you are interested, or if you know some ladies who are interested, and even guys, we'd love to have you all too. If you'd like to join us and take a look at what we're doing, we're actually building out programs in front-end development related content for everyone, whether it's JavaScript, React I do love, so I have a personal preference, but Vue, Angular, things of that nature. Definitely take a look at our content. If you love, you definitely can follow us at Women Who Code. Women Who Code front end on Twitter, and Women Who Code front end 1. Definitely, we have a lot of resources there, so definitely share this out with your network if you'd like to, or just check us out for yourselves, because we do like to have, as I stated, and we had a lot of content that was React based, and we do find that our community asked us about React specifically. So I can tell people really love React. It's just one of those things, and JavaScript's never going anywhere, of course. And we know Vue and Angular is out there too, but we do get a plethora of information, and we do curate a lot of content on React. So was there any other questions I can answer for anybody? Well, I can give you more React content because I definitely like to talk about React. Because some of the things that I'm noticing now, it's so crazy how React is moving and the mass adoption. And definitely, like I said, with hooks going on right now, as far as automating processes, you definitely want those types of things, because being a developer or being in software development, wherever you are, you're always trying to learn how to cut down time, maximize your time. Of course, when you need to go to production at a certain day, certain time, you got to get something out, you got to get something working. You're always going to look for something to help you move that along and move that process better. So I definitely like to look into any type of processes that is going to move and streamline the process. So I thought that would be very great to take a look at. But I do hope that you all take a look at this a little bit further, see if you haven't already implemented it into your side projects or things of that nature. Just take a little bit more of a look and find some things. Definitely, you can reach out to me on Twitter at jponder77 if there's anything interesting that you all come across that would be helpful. Definitely, I like to take a look at it too, because I know it's always constant things always flowing around in the dev community that are very helpful, and things are changing all the time. So I love to connect with all of you and just see what you're finding, what you're doing with React hooks, of course. And I always like to look at different projects from different developers as well on GitHub. So that's really, really cool to do too, just to see how, web optimization works for everyone. So definitely like that. So, yep, definitely. So share our information, and pretty much that's what I have today. Thank you, guys.